District, grades first and second.
And how many students in that school?
There are just over 100 students in our school.
And the two big issues that we want to talk to the secretary about are the impacts of No Child Left Behind on these rural schools, and then the teacher housing. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about one first or the other, or
I guess where I live personally, teacher housing is not really a factor. We do have some issues with our housing being kept nicely, but other than that, I mean, we don't use honey buckets or anything like that. So, I mean, I've heard some horror stories from other villages, so I really don't feel like I'm able to discuss that very well, just because we just don't have that issue where I am. So,
great. How many teachers are there in Cayenne?
we have 10 teachers on our staff.
And at the secondary level, how many different classes or how many different subjects do the high school teachers teach?
Most of our high school teachers teach at least 2 subjects. Some of them teach 3 or 4, and they all absolutely teach 2, 3, 4 classes within a class period. So it makes it very difficult to be effective.
You know, the No Child Left Behind law mandates that a teacher must be highly qualified in every subject she teaches or he teaches. And how does that work? And
That has affected me personally. I'm actually a special education teacher, but I am having to teach elementary school, so I had to go get highly qualified. I just took the praxis to get highly qualified in the subject area. It does make it difficult in a setting where there are only 10 teachers, because teachers have to go and get highly qualified to teach science when they're a math teacher, or social studies when they teach English, just so that the kids can be taught the classes that they need in order to graduate. So,
what kind of support does the district give for, this extra qualifying, what's needed to become highly qualified?
our school district provides reimbursement for the testing fees and the flight into Kotzebue, which is where we have to test. They did not reimburse for the hotel, so we kind of had to bear that burden ourselves. So,
How much turnover is among teachers is there in Cayenne?
this past year we lost 3 teachers. So, in the year before we lost 5 teachers. So, the attrition rate's pretty, yeah. So.
And what impact does that, that kind of churning the turnover, what impact does that have on the students?
It definitely has a negative impact on our students.
Let's see, if I could get you to start all over.
Okay.
This high turnover definitely has an impact. This high teacher turnover definitely has an impact. If you
Yes.
just start off like that, so we'll know what you're talking
Okay.
about.
The high teacher turnover has a very negative impact on our students. I have been in the village for 4 years. This will be my 5th. And it's taken this long just for the parents and students to trust me. So you can imagine if teachers are coming in and out for a year or 2 years, then that affects the relationship that students have with their teachers in the classroom, which impacts their ability to learn. Yes, it's very difficult for the students emotionally. Having a relationship with the students when you teach in a village is one of the best ways to impact them academically. And when you can't establish that relationship because you can't gain and develop that trust, then it's nearly impossible to really, do the job that you need to do. It's very relationship-oriented kind of community, a Native community is, so.
Very well put. That's a good, just your past minute and a half was very articulate. How about, let's see, talk to me about the testing, the standardized testings, and how relevant is that on your students? Well, do your students all speak English?
Yes, they do all speak English. Inupiaq is spoken in the homes, but most of them are not fluent. So, we do the testing for English language learning each year, and most of our students are considered to be ELL. So,
is that right?
yes, even though English is kind of considered their first language, because their native languages, they're just dying. The native language is just dying, yet and still. English is their first language, but they haven't mastered it, especially not academic language. There's a difference between speaking and doing academic work with language,
So, so these standardized tests that are geared toward, urban and suburban kids down in America, how do your students relate to that? How do they do on those tests? How do they relate? And
we've kind of had an interesting experience in Kiana. When I first came, we were at the bottom of the school district as far as our test scores went. Last year, we actually made AYP, which was fantastic, but this past year, our test scores went back down. I do after-school tutoring, in prep right before the SBAs, and I think that it's not the instruction that we give, it's not the students' inability to understand what we've taught them. It's the language that's a huge barrier for our kids. So I spend a lot of time in those sessions just explaining to them what they're looking for. This is the answer that you need to give. And I don't know that necessarily shows that they've learned anything. They've learned how to read and take a test, as opposed to expressing knowledge in more useful ways. So,
anything else that comes to mind that you would like to say to the number one guy in education in the country?
I guess I would say I have taught in 2 states now. I taught in Florida for 7 years before I came here to Alaska, and there's absolutely a significant difference in the type of professional development I've received since I've been a teacher in Alaska. I think that our students have very significant needs just because of their isolation. Has absolutely nothing to do with their inherent intellectual abilities, and they need the best teachers. They absolutely need teachers who are passionate about their jobs. And they know what they're doing when they teach students, but we receive the least amount of professional development. I personally get lots of professional development, but I do all of that on my own. I spent thousands of dollars this summer to, I try to do something every summer to develop my skills as a language arts teacher. So I don't think that everyone is quite as dedicated as that, and it's very unfortunate that the kids who need the most kind of get the least as far as teachers go. Some of our teachers most of our teachers are absolutely amazing, but, aren't able, or, I'm a single person, so I'm able to expend that money, but some people can't do it, so.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay.